Yo sé bien que estoy afuera.
I'm in one of the greatest cities on earth, Mexico City, to talk about how it has been represented in cinema. I'm wearing this mask because I'm not actually talking. I don't want to be some sort of annoying gringo, so if my facial expressions don't match what I'm saying, that's why. Let's head back in time. Mexico City is one of the great cities for art as a whole, not just film. And maybe its most famous artist is Frida Kahlo. Here I am outside her house, which is now a remarkably popular museum. I forgot to book in advance, so this is all I'll be seeing today. But how has Kahlo been represented on the big screen? Well, in 2002 there was the biographical film Frida, starring Selma Hayek, who was pretty good as the monobrowed artist. But what was odd about the film was that it was all in English and features actors from the US, the UK, Italy and Australia. A far better film about her was released this year, a documentary with the same name, Frida, with beautiful animation accompanying Kahlo's actual writings and interviews.
Me dan ganas de hacer el amor, tomarme un baño y hacer el amor de nuevo.
Now let's move to 1950, where Kahlo herself attended the premiere of the film Los Olvidados by the surrealist filmmaker Luis Buñuel, who had made Mexico City his home. The film showed the struggle of the poor and held a torch up to the dark side of the city. People were appalled at the premiere, with Kahlo refusing to speak to Buñuel. Buñuel spent the second half of his life here, and with this film he went away from his more surreal work and showed the shocking true nature of how some were struggling in the city. It was shot in the slums, which are now fully gentrified, including this stunning little square where some of it was filmed. This has always been a city of extremes, the extremely wealthy and the extremely poor, and this divide plays an important part of many of the great films set here. And Buñuel was the first artist to show the brutal truth of the children of the streets. The title means The Forgotten Ones, and we follow a group of forgotten young people struggling to get by. It was a shocking film then, but it still has the power to shock today. It never shies away from how desperate the situation is for these children and how cruel they can be in return. Scenes where they beat up an old blind man, scenes where they bully a man with no legs, and even scenes where they kill each other. The film features one of the all-time great antagonists, the central bully who is utterly hateable, but you still feel sorry for him as he is a product of his environment and is totally trapped. But now let's move from the 1950s to the 1960s with another remarkable film which again deals with the rich-poor divide while showing off Mexico City's amazing nightlife. 1967's Los Caifanes. This film falls into one of my favourite subgenres, the wild night out film. Movies about people, usually from the middle class, who get caught up in a crazy night out on the town that they seemingly can't escape from. My favourite example being Martin Scorsese's After Hours. But this film, much like Los Olvidados, again deals with the disparity of wealth in the city. We follow an engaged middle-class couple who leave a dull party, only to get caught up with a working-class gang on a tour of the town. The film is a wild ride, brilliantly showing off the very 60s nightlife of 1960s Mexico City, while highlighting the tensions between the classes. There are even some wonderful surreal moments that totally fit this kind of movie. This is a hard film to find, and I think that is a real shame, as this is a classic of Mexican cinema. Now from the 1960s into the 1970s, well, at least set in the 70s, Roma was filmed here, in Roma, where one of the greatest Mexican directors of all time, Alfonso Cuarón, was brought up. Yet again, this is a film that deals with the class divide in the city. Based loosely on Cuarón's childhood, we see an upper-middle-class family, but the film is not focused on them, but on the indigenous live-in housekeeper. She becomes pregnant at the same time as the father of the house leaves his family. Suddenly their dynamic changes, just as the city around them changes during the student protests of 1971, where 120 demonstrators lost their lives. Roma is a stunning-looking, sensitive film that captures 1970s Mexico City beautifully. Some films shot in Mexico City in the 70s included the marvelous Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
25 people will die. All because of Alfredo Garcia. And only one man really knows why. Sam Peckinpah.
And there was The Holy Mountain by another one-of-a-kind director, Jodorowsky. What is it about this city that attracts such unique artists? The red building behind me was used in the wonderfully bonkers film. And keeping with Jodorowsky, let's move into the 1980s, here where he filmed the insane Santa Sangre. This psychedelic surrealist horror is absolutely mental, following a former child circus performer now struggling with trauma and having to look after his armless mother. It is sexual, horrific, and has plenty of religious imagery. After all, this is a very religious city. One day I came across this moving representation of the stages of the cross, seemingly directed by Woody Allen. It has all the stations of the cross that you remember, including Jesus falls for the second time, Jesus is stripped of his garments, and also when the Romans and Jesus drank Gatorade. Moving into the 1990s, we have the debut of another brilliant Mexican director, Guillermo del Toro, with the horror Cronos. There were some American films here as well. A lot of Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet equals tragedy was filmed here. This is where, as Shakespeare put it, two gorgeous people offed themselves. And the stunning castle behind me stood in for the mansion of the Capulets. And we had another black and white retelling of Mexico City's past with Güeros, a 2014 film that tells the story of three young men searching for a singer during the 1999 student strike. Now moving on to the 2000s. Alfonso Cuarón filmed some of the excellent sexual road movie Y tu mamá también here, starring the magnificent Gael Garcia Bernal, who also starred in my personal favourite Mexican movie of this century so far, Amores, Perros, directed by another brilliant filmmaker from Mexico City, Alejandro González Iñárritu. This remarkable film has three different stories, all connected by a car crash. And another thing that links these three stories are dogs. Indeed, Mexico City seemingly has more dogs than people in it. People really pamper their pooches here. You can't go a second without seeing a dog walker. The title itself is a pun, as it means loves dogs, but perros can also mean misery, and love dogs and love misery perfectly sum up this film. Each of the three stories would make wonderful standalone films in their own right. In the first we see Bernal, who wants to make enough money to run away with his brother's wife. He decides the best way to make money is through dogfights. The editing of these scenes is terrific, making dogs playing with each other look like vicious fights to the death. In the second story, we follow a model who breaks her leg in the car crash. Things only seem to get worse for her and her lover when their pet dog goes missing under the floorboards of their apartment. And in the final segment, we follow a tramp-like hitman with an ever-growing collection of dogs. The dogs in the film represent loyalty and humans' tendency to be disloyal. And yet again, we have a film dealing with the inequality in the city. Our three central characters are a vagrant, someone squatting in the outskirts of the city, and someone living in a luxury apartment. It is a riveting film that captures the complex nature of this astonishing city in a similar way to Los Olvidados 50 years prior. A lot of American films set in the city like to focus on the crime there, often failing to get across the immense beauty of the place. Such films include Tony Scott's glossy and violent Man on Fire.
24 kidnappings in Mexico City in the last 6 days.
And now moving into the 2010s, the opening of the Bond film Spectre was filmed in this spectacular hotel. This hotel was also used in the 1982 film Missing, standing in for a city in Chile. And this hotel also features in another Bond film, License to Kill, which was also shot at this post office, which has to be the most beautiful post office in the world. In License to Kill, again, it's not meant to be Mexico, but a fictional country based on Panama. Indeed, Mexico City has often been used as a filming location to stand in for more dangerous places, such as Colombia in Clear and Present Danger. It is also a city that has been used to show the future. I am here where the original Total Recall was filmed.
Fasten your seatbelt.
And the great subway network was shown in that film. Paul Verhoeven's use of squibs make this one of my favourite escalators in the world. Also in the movie studios in this great city, David Lynch's Dune was filmed, which has some good things in it, but overall is not as good as the recent adaptations. Okay, one thing that is better is the fact that Patrick Stewart carries around a pug with him. So that's my brief history of Mexico City on film. I'm not from here, so I've probably missed out loads of brilliant Mexican movies shot here. So please do add your favourite Mexico City films below. So now all that's left to say is goodbye, or as Benicio del Toro said it in Sicario Day of the Soldado,
Adiós.
Una piedra del camino me enseñó que mi destino